So you want to train with kettlebells, but you don't want to invest in cast iron or other high-end options. Maybe you don't have the funds right now, or maybe you'd rather spend more money on other items in your gym. Maybe you want to train outside and you don't want to store your expensive kettlebells where they're exposed to the elements. Or maybe you just want to build something with your hands. Well, in this video, we're going to do just that using the Stix and Stone kettlebell mold. With basic materials, we'll build a durable concrete kettlebell that can be reproduced over and over again, giving you increased savings. And the best part, unlike some DIY kettlebells, this one doesn't suck. More on that coming up. Hey, what's up friends? I'm glad you're here because today is yet another perfect day to talk about gym equipment. Hey guys, my name is Adam with Garage Gym Lab, and if you're new here, this channel is all about testing and reviewing gym equipment, building the home gym community, and providing inspiration to anybody out there who's looking to build their dream gym. So if that's something you're into, I definitely encourage you to subscribe. That way you can stay up to date with all the weekly content. One of my favorite things about the home gym community is just how much ingenuity there is out there from home gym owners. Whether it's creating hacks with equipment that you already have or building things completely from scratch, I'm constantly blown away by some of the things that y'all come up with. And I say y'all because I'm not really myself an advanced DIYer at all. I've done a few things here and there in my gym, but nothing to the level as some of you. By the way, if you're into DIY things, I absolutely suggest you check out Kyle from Kaizen DIY Gym. He has some excellent tutorials and DIY builds. During COVID, as you all know, it was really hard to find gym equipment. It was either get lucky on restocks, pay enormous prices on Facebook Marketplace, or build your own stuff. Thankfully, one guy set out to help a lot of people, and that's David from Stix and Stone. Through his DIY molds, he gave people the ability to create durable and nice looking concrete plates, then dumbbells, and most recently, kettlebells. And while equipment inventory does continue to normalize, these DIY options are still great for a lot of people. What makes these molds especially great is that they allow you to reuse them, so you can make as many kettlebells as you want. And for every kettlebell that you make, the price per pound goes down. Thanks, economies of scale. I knew I'd be able to use my economics degree again. For example, a 32 kilogram kettlebell from Rep Fitness is around $130 shipped, whereas the Stix and Stone kettlebell mold, which allows up to 70 pounds or close to 32 kilograms of concrete weight, is only $100. And for every subsequent kettlebell that you build after that, it's only the cost of the handle, which is $25, plus the cost of concrete and a few small materials, all of which are really affordable. So depending on how many kettlebells you intend to create, it can lead to substantial savings compared to store-bought kettlebells. In terms of the materials that you're gonna need, it's really pretty basic. Aside from the mold itself, the first thing that you're gonna need is concrete. Stix and Stone recommends high-strength 5,000 plus concrete mix to ensure a strong and durable kettlebell. By the way, of all the products that Stix and Stone offers, the kettlebell is likely to last the longest, just given the fact that you're likely to drop it far less than you would plates and dumbbells. The second thing that you're going to need is some silicone spray. This is going to be used to line the inside of the mold, so it makes it much easier to remove when the concrete hardens. The third thing you'll need are some heavy-duty nails or round bar. I'm using 20D nails here, and these will be inserted into the bottom of the kettlebell handle in a cross pattern on each side to increase durability and to ensure that the handle can't slide out over time. This will require you to drill some holes into the handle, so you will need access to a drill and a bit. The fourth thing that you'll need is some duct tape. This will be used to set the edge and keep the mold, the nails, and the spacer in place as the concrete hardens. You can also prevent concrete from getting into the handle by duct taping the hollow side. You'll need two buckets, one to mix the concrete and the other to hold the mold. You'll also need something to mix the concrete with, whether that's a shovel or just some good old-fashioned gloves. And optionally, you can use a 2.5-inch block spacer to keep the appropriate distance between the handle and the bell. Lastly, you'll need a scale to measure out the dry concrete needed, net of the mold and handle weight to create the total desired kettlebell weight. And that's it. Nothing crazy and very inexpensive overall. So with that, let's take this to the floor and let's make a kettlebell. After a few days, we'll crack it open, and after a few more days of curing, we'll be able to use it. All right guys, so I've got myself a little lay down area here, just using some rolled paper from Lowe's. If you ever need any of that, then you can find it in the paint section there. But I've got all of my materials here, so we can go ahead and get started. First thing we need to do is prep the mold, and we're gonna do that with the silicone spray. This is gonna make it a lot easier to demold the kettlebell when all is said and done in a couple days. The point of this is not to lay it on real thick, you just wanna use a nice even coat around both halves. So we'll get, almost got a nice scent to it. Very lubey. So now that we're all lubed up, we need to start prepping the handle. I've gone ahead and drilled 4 holes in a cross pattern on the bottom of these handles for those nails that I mentioned earlier. And there's a couple things to keep in mind with these handles. If you're making a kettlebell between 25 and 35 pounds, you're gonna wanna cut off about 1 inch of length on each side. And if you're doing anything less than that, by the way, the minimum resistance on these kettlebells through these molds is 20 pounds. You'll need to cut off about 2 inches of length. The other thing to keep in mind is you're going to want to use nails or round bar in place of screws since they're less likely to shear. Stix and Stone recommends 60D nails, which are thicker than this, but I had some trouble finding 60D, so what I'm using here is 20D, but I think they'll work just fine. I'm gonna go ahead and apply some duct tape now to the bottom of the handle. 1, to keep the concrete from entering the handle, and 2, to keep these nails from moving around as I set the handle in the mold. With that done, I'm gonna place my 2.5 inch block spacer between the handle and the bell to create a space consistent with production kettlebells. So now that our handle's in place, the next thing we have to do is connect the 2 halves. These 2 pieces simply snap together, and when you're done with that, we need to tape it shut because over time, as that concrete hardens, it's gonna wanna push them apart. So I've got some pre-cut pieces of tape here to make it go a little bit faster, but the first thing that we wanna do is do it across the seam. And you wanna try to get a really nice tight bond here. That way everything is going to line up nicely and not spread apart. Now that that's done, we're gonna tape the long edge just to get the border really nice. Okay, after we get done with that, we want to tape this whole opening right here where the handle sits because this is gonna be sitting upside down when we put it in the bucket. We don't want concrete seeping through these holes, so we'll just cover that up. And then lastly, we're gonna wanna reintroduce our 2 inch spacer here just to make sure that it's gonna stay the right distance throughout the curing process. All right, there we have it. Our kettlebell mold is now ready for concrete. All right guys, so I moved this outside so I don't get my gym all dusty, but the next step in the process, and before we actually start making the concrete, is we need to determine how much dry concrete we actually need. I'm trying to build a 70-pound kettlebell. I know that the mold and the handle weighs about 5 pounds, which means I need about 65 pounds of dry concrete. So I'm just gonna pull out my Spyderco knife, give it a little spidey flick. God, that's satisfying. So to get to as close to 65 pounds as I can, I first need to put the bucket on the scale, set that to 0. Then instead of trying to go little by little, dumping concrete into the bucket to get to 65, I'm just gonna dump all 80 pounds in there and then take out 15. Just seems to look a little bit easier to me. So let's get this bad boy on the scale. Set that to 0. And then here we go. Oh, Spyderco. Maybe I should get sponsored by Spyderco. Here we go. Please don't fuck this up. Ooh, dusty. Don't fall on me, baby. Okay, so I lied. I'm not gonna put all 80 pounds in there because I don't think 80 pounds is gonna fit. Right now we're at 66.1, so I'm just gonna take a little bit out of here. There we go. 65.1, that's pretty good. So the instructions on this concrete say to add about a gallon of water for the full 80-pound bag. Obviously we're doing 65 pounds, so I'm not gonna use a full gallon, but I'm going to just start adding and mixing as I go. The key is to not let it become very soupy. And I'll be honest guys, I've never worked with concrete before in my entire life, so we'll see how dummy proof this is. As I said, I'm just gonna start adding, mixing as I go until the consistency is somewhere between soup and thicker than a bowl of oatmeal. All right guys, so that was a little bit more challenging than I thought. The bucket wasn't as big as I was expecting, and the concrete kind of got really wet on top, but not so wet on the bottom. So I had to mix it in between two buckets to get it all saturated, but it's all good now, I think. So let's head back into the garage, put it in the kettlebell mold, and make a kettlebell. All right guys, so this should be the easy part. I'm just gonna transfer the concrete into the mold, and as I do it, I'm gonna agitate the mold a little bit, shake it a little bit. That way it gets some of those air bubbles out and hopefully creates a smoother surface when all said and done. So here we go. Well, but now it's gonna be a 69-pound kettlebell.
What follows is a brief construction montage. We hope you enjoyed this brief construction montage.
All right guys, so I just got done putting the concrete in the mold and I think it turned out pretty good. We'll find out in a couple days. Thank God for this lay down area though, because I totally made a mess. So in the meantime, I'm gonna put a bag over it. I'll see you guys in 48 hours. We'll crack this bad boy open and see how it turned out.
Day 3.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. It's been about 2.5 days since we first poured the concrete and I'm ready to crack this bad boy open and see what we've made. So I've already gone ahead and taken the tape off just to make this go by a little bit faster. And I've noticed that this top section is already starting to come off, which tells me that the silicone spray definitely did its job. Now, one of the things I noticed as this thing was curing was that it wasn't perfectly vertical in the bucket. I'm not sure if that happened as I was pouring the concrete in, or maybe it shifted a little bit as it was curing, but I'm not sure that this is gonna come out with a perfectly uniform round body like you would find on a production kettlebell. Not sure if that's gonna really influence the movements that I'm gonna be doing, but it may sit a little bit funny. So with that, let's go ahead and take it off and see what we got. Came off very easily, actually. And there we have it. Concrete kettlebell. And yeah, it's got a little bit of a lean to it. You know, as I was mentioning, this is the first time I've ever worked with concrete. And I think that there's a little bit of a learning curve with this in general. I think that there's maybe some trial and error with it. So your first kettlebell probably isn't gonna be your best kettlebell. Now this isn't done curing entirely. There's about another 5 days that I need to allow it to cure, get that moisture out before I can use it. If I wanted to, I could go ahead and make another kettlebell because the mold is totally free now. And I think that I could do a better job knowing that I've learned a little bit through this process. So anyway, in 5 days, we'll come back, we'll weigh this and see how close we are. We'll use it, I'll give you guys some impressions, and we'll go from there.
Several days later.
Welcome back again, friends. It's been a full 5 days since we demolded our kettlebell, and you can see where the moisture in the bottom of that kettlebell is now completely gone, which means it's now ready to be used. I did go ahead and weigh this out, and it came in around 67 pounds. I was, of course, aiming for a 70-pounder, as I mentioned earlier, so I was a little bit off. But if you look at one side of the bell, you can see where there's a little bit of a lip here where it didn't line up perfectly, unlike the other side, which did. What I'm thinking happened here is the mold wasn't perfectly vertical in the bucket, as I suspected, and this shifted the concrete while also giving the illusion that maybe it was fuller than it actually was, which led to the lighter weight. I'm confident that this is something that I could dial in on future kettlebells, but consistency from bell to bell is something to consider if you're planning on building these. A couple of other points before getting into my impressions of use. First, if you don't end up making a 70-pounder, rather than having a full body like you see here, it'll simply be reduced from the bottom, which will give you a wider base depending on your actual weight. Second, this handle is raw steel. You can either leave it as is, or you can texture it with something like grip tape, you can paint it, or you can use something like clear coat to help prevent some oxidation or change the overall look. Okay, so the question that we're all asking by now is, how does this actually feel and how does it compare to a production kettlebell? I'm quite impressed with how this feels overall. As I showed earlier, there is some lean to this kettlebell, but it's not nearly enough to notice when actually using it. Whether it's a swing, a goblet squat, or bent over rows, it feels very normal to me. The handle feels nice in the hand, and while it doesn't have a textured surface, at least out of the box compared to a powder-coated kettlebell, it does feel consistent in terms of diameter, distance, width, etc. Now, this kettlebell is larger than a weight equivalent production kettlebell. The closest one that I have is a 32 kilogram kettlebell, so 71 pounds, and despite that actually being heavier than my Stix and Stone, it is considerably smaller. Durability-wise, there's less concern on a kettlebell than there would be on plates and dumbbells because you're not dropping or potentially slamming a kettlebell unless you have to bail. Still, I did a drop test on my street from chest high, please don't tell my HOA, and it held up just fine. I wouldn't recommend it to be sure, but an occasional drop from time to time is likely going to be okay. So is this concrete kettlebell as nice as a production kettlebell? Well, no, I don't think so. It's a good bit larger, it's not going to be as consistent, and the durability is likely not going to be as high over the long term. That said, however, you do have considerable cost savings, the reusability is a great selling feature, and some people just find a lot of satisfaction in building things with their own hands. If that's you, then I would absolutely recommend the Stix and Stone kettlebell mold, and I think it's easily one of the best DIY kettlebell options out there. So with that, what do you guys think of this mold? And what do you think of concrete kettlebells in general? Is this something that you would do in your own gym? Let me know in the comments section down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. Until then, be well, and we'll chat soon.